Right on.
Let's all pray to
Just a
God that
gigolo.
this works, or whatever
Whatever
deity.
deity you believe in.
Yeah, yeah. Come on, baby.
Life goes on without me. Cause I got
ain't
nobody.
All right, there's a delay, but it's working. All right, how's everybody doing?
Fine. How are you?
I was talking to the chat, but yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
I was talking
We'll
to
get to you,
Spirit
Josh.
Lenny.
I'm tired of waking up tired.
What do I want to pick? My nose.
Go to the
No.
Well, your friends won't pick it.
No.
Well, then they're not real friends.
No, they're not. Not very close.
I think that's a little too close for me, but okay.
Yeah,
I
Sabres
really
are
should
beating the
get,
Blackhawks.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, they were losing 2-0. Now it's 3-2. So,
Go Sabres.
well, they suck.
Yes, go away.
Hey, shut up. Hey, come on, man. We are expansion bros. The Canucks and the Sabres, 1970.
Screw this Canucks. I'm a Habs fan, mate.
Oh, really?
Have been all my life.
Oh, all right.
Original 6.
Who?
Is it
Who
Abiens
was
or
your
Habitants?
Les Habitants.
What the Blackhawks, Red Wings,
Toronto.
Rangers.
Rangers, Toronto,
And Boston.
Yeah.
Yep.
You ready to do a podcast?
Maybe.
Hockey?
Do you
Okay.
have
Oh.
a pick, Josh?
I'm working on it.
Okay.
I'll have one
So
here
with these
shortly.
news topics, most of them were written by Jeremy. 1 or 2 were written by Tim. I don't want to just lean on Jeremy to do every single one, though I would be happy to do that. It could just be Jeremy cast with people chiming in when they have relevant comments.
Are you sure that's wise?
I'm fine with it. I'll just put my feet up on this lower lat coffee table that's beneath me.
Did you burn your hand, or the color level is just wildly different depending on
My
where your
hands?
camera is?
Yeah, it does
They're
look a little
significant.
red.
No, my
Red in
hands
your
are
face.
my hands are all mottled and purplish red because I have terrible blood circulation and will probably die young.
Have
You
you
don't
tried
look at-
But
alcohol?
you're a veterinarian.
Veterinarian.
See, most of the time you can't see my hands on the stream, and that's probably for good reason. It's going to be alarming
Yeah.
when people
You
see
know,
how red my hands get in the wintertime.
I've heard that animal protein is good for circulation.
I don't know what that means. Oh, you're talking
And
about like
hard liquor.
iron, and like red blood cells and stuff. Yeah,
Yeah, you
I
know, food and nutrition.
The only
No,
thing
hard
that I
liquor and
eat
blood
that has any,
thinners.
the only thing I eat that has any iron in it is my breakfast cereal, which is iron fortified.
How many bowls of
like
total, or
45.
how many bowls of cornflakes would you need to eat to get the same nutritious value as a single bowl of total?
Oh,
How many bowls of total would you need to eat to get the same iron as 1 6-ounce steak?
Or this hex nut.
Guess that would be a good reason to go back to eating meat.
There's so many.
I mean, somebody's got to eat all those delicious animals.
Yes. And it's me. Did we just cut off?
No, well, I'm.
Oh, everybody just went quiet at the one
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Yeah, we're waiting on.
I'm gonna turn my
I
laptop.
was worried
in case
on
someone-
Alan's request. He wants you to tell Dr. Seuss tales.
Can you paraphrase a Dr. Seuss tale, or does it count as like fair use because you're interpreting it on our podcast? There are literary podcasts where they just straight up read. They don't get any. I wonder if they suffer from copyright strikes. Or
I
anything
don't
like
think
that.
Dr. Geisel would mind.
Yeah, how aggressively does the Dr. Seuss Coalition police YouTube videos?
Probably not very aggressive at all. Would you? Could you in a box
Would you? Could you? With a fox?
with a fox? That's terrible.
Yeah, it's
No,
Mouse House, Fox Fox. Trust me, I've been reading this. This is my son's favorite book right now.
a train in the rain.
He called it I Am Sam.
Out real quick. BRB.
For those in the chat, how are our audio levels? Because I've noticed when I edit the show that what I'm hearing now live monitoring is not how it sounds in the recording. So, are all of us at good levels for you guys? Keeping in mind
Is
that
anyone watching?
there's a 20-second delay or so.
Which comments should we be focusing on?
Well, I look at YouTube chat because IRC
Oh, okay. You're
is
brave.
eventually going to end, unfortunately, just due to the way the new site's set up. So I'm on the low side, Alan says. All right, I can fix that.
Oh, Alan's in the YouTube chat as well.
Well, somebody along those. Somebody claiming to be
ICQ
Alan.
likes us.
Okay, I boosted it a little bit. Is it too much? Not enough?
Sounds fine to me.
Okay.
Okay. YouTube chat.
I don't know that I
mean-
can bring myself to do it.
Well, if you guys are still monitoring IRC, by all means, it's just I've got a limited amount of space. I can't monitor. I can only monitor one chat at a time. Plus, we got Discord coming in too. So
Yeah, it becomes overwhelming because I check Discord, I have IRC up, and now I have YouTube up, and I'll just hang back when other people are talking, and I will not be responding to comments when I'm talking, or I will lose my mind.
That's what we're aiming for.
I mean, I can't even look at the comments without.
I can't bring
don't have
myself
screen real estate here. Is there a way to just funnel everything into one like super bucket, comment bucket? Commentsbucket.com.
Someone should
Join
create
today.
something.
for
No, Chum
$9.95.
Bucket.
Chum Bucket.
It should definitely be called Chum Bucket.
Do you hate joy? Join Chum Bucket today. Wait, no, that's copyrighted by Nickelodeon. The Chum Bucket
Oh, I thought
is
it was done- Oh, true.
it's what is his name? Plankton's restaurant.
Yeah.
Mm.
Well,
Yes, it is an excellent collection of vintage game boxes for Jim.
what?
I have one. Wait, no, there's a few up there, but Jim has all the games.
Oh yes.
I just have a few games. I gave up. I stopped even trying to collect because it's too depressing.
Depressing.
Now you can collect video cards.
Right, because you chase these games because you think they're going to make you happy, and then you pay like $80 for a game, you get it, and the corner is all crushed because they put it in a bubble mailer instead of a box, and then
Well, you don't pay $80. You wait for the sales. You get a bulk. A big lot. And get a couple games in there, and
I suffered from that sickness for a long time, Jim.
Yeah.
And I did buy some lots. My first lot was actually around $80, but out of it, maybe I got 2 games. One of which was actually this copy of Diablo back here.
Oh,
yes,
wow.
I've got mine right there.
I mean, you can
Yeah, I don't know where
barely
mine
see the
went.
spine.
Well, I tried to set it the other way and it falls over, so I just
Oh, all right.
and I can't move this damn camera anymore. Screwing with it all day.
Okay. For podcast intro, are we going to continue doing the around the horn style or should we introduce each person and they say some funny comment or anecdote, or what?
I don't know.
Well, that's too much thought. That's,
Thoughts? No, if I say like I'm blah 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 and from Laramie, Wyoming, the one, the only Josh Walrath, and then Josh says hi everybody, and then I say how is Laramie, Josh?
I say it's cold and
how's the
icy.
weather?
And then it got warm.
Oh, is it cold again?
Sure. Yeah, I think it went
Has that
below.
been screwing with your sinuses at all?
No, not
All
too
right,
bad.
see, that's one way. That's one format. That's all. I've just been thinking about
Yeah,
how,
it's to
especially
beat
if we
you
ever
right
have
now.
additional people on the podcast, it becomes harder to just do the like rigid. All right, I say my name and then I wait, and then somebody says, anyway, whatever.
It's
Wherever
like you
works
haven't
for
done this
That's how I can
500
be.
times or something.
Yeah.
I know. Anything to boost the ratings.
Fine, I'll take my shirt off. Jeez.
All right, cool. What did I do? I left the...
I'm Jim Tanis, and I'm addicted to Cheez-Its.
See? Wait, are you seriously? You like Cheez-Its?
Who doesn't like Cheez-Its? They've got all
I
kinds
do
of
not like
flavors
Cheez-Its.
now. You got
They
like
taste
Usama bin
like
Laden
shots.
love Cheez-Its.
What, they've got like
Oh.
orange flavor and purple flavor and blue flavor now?
No, they got like garlic and white cheddar and
Okay,
cheddar and
all right, white-
bacon
I could-
and zesty
All right.
spice.
Is that what you eat, or do you eat the standard orange ones?
I don't know. I'm usually in the dark and I'm crying and I don't really recall.
You say
a
that
lot.
to be funny, but I suspect it might actually be true.
That's
Yeah.
how you eat Cheez-Its, I think.
I don't even remember eating them. I just look at my Amazon Prime delivery history. So anyway,
Oh no, that's really bad because that means you're probably ordering the cases.
well, no, it's the Prime Now, so you're just paying markup on the regular size boxes.
I don't have Prime Now where I live. The last time I ordered any kind of snack on Amazon, it was Doritos, and it was the little vending machine size bags. The box came, and it was surprisingly large. And then I opened it up, and it was like more than I could ever eat before the expiration. They were in like every cabinet. Like we have a cabinet above our
They don't
microwave,
expire.
and it was I was stuffing them in and like cramming the cabinet door shut, and they were like everywhere. They were all over the kitchen.
Sounds
Yeah, they
like
do.
heaven.
They'd expire.
Hmm.
And we could not eat enough of them, and we ended up throwing a bunch of them away. It was sad.
Yep.
Okay.
Save them for
Any
Halloween.
for
Even better, save them 2 years and then give them away at Halloween.
the few trick or treaters we ever get, I'll scare them away forever. We're still doing like numbers and everything, right, Jim? Has that changed? Any further clarification on that nonsense?
I mean, well, so Apple came out and said, "Whoa, we didn't necessarily mean that." I don't know if that's true or if like enough big podcasts push back, but yeah, I guess we're still doing the numbers because I don't know how else to order them. We're for those who don't know, we're talking about there was an incident a week or so ago where Apple came out and said, "Hey, if you put the name of your show or the episode number in the podcast title, we're going to take your podcast off of iTunes." And literally everyone said, "What the hell? That's how we name all of our shows." And the Apple backtracked quickly. So
Yeah, that's dumb.
Good.
yeah. Well, you know,
Well,
actually,
Tim,
then I will.
we could experiment this week because there's been several weeks where we've had some fun discussion before the official start of the show, and I don't know how to like put it into the final episode. So we could just like cut to live, like just the show has already begun, and this is all just going to go out. Somebody's going to get their RSS, notification and join us live in progress.
That works for me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is episode
If you
If you
showed
showed up
500.
on time, you'd know what was happening.
Uh-huh.
But you didn't.
Yeah. Episode 535.
It's March 7, 2019. Thank you for making us part of your world tonight. Or something.
And this is Cheez It Weekly.
I need to go get my dog in. He's barking.
Oh,
Is that a metaphor?
That's not how the song goes.
Oh,
I'm
Jesus.
gonna open up my adult beverage for the evening.
I love how my feed coming in is actually very jerky. So all I saw was Josh just sort of start to drop it, and then all of a sudden he fast forwarded and was out the door.
Oh, is it like a low bandwidth issue, or is it just?
It's not telling me.
Oh, is the stream looking
Audio's
okay,
fine,
guys?
just video.
For those for the audience watching, is the stream going to YouTube smooth? Because we are fighting with that like limited bandwidth issue. Is the dog inside, Josh?
The dog is inside.
All right.
Business.
It's inside every one of us.
Yeah.
That's the secret.
I was in the San Francisco airport connecting yesterday, and there's a next to the bathrooms in one of the main concourse areas where you go to the different gate sections.
Dog potty area.
Yeah, it says dog or pet relief area, and it was just there was a door, and I didn't know what, and I'm like, is it just tile floor with drains and hoses and shit? I mean, what is in there? How did?
No, it's like this big grass stuff.
Okay.
Last I saw.
Do you have to clean
But
it
yeah,
up?
everybody's got like emotional support animals.
Yeah.
I thought airlines were cracking down on that. Wasn't Delta one of the first to say that you can't have it just as a support animal?
You
it has to
can't
be
have an
legitimate?
emotional support turkey. Yeah.
What about my
Emotional
emotional
support
support
turkey.
skunk?
Well, I thought a possum would be, but people actually do have possums with pets. So I don't know. Well, let's get it moving.
Yep.
Please.
Once again, Josh is being pushy. Jim, make Josh stop
cracking
being
that
pushy.
whip.
Well, what happens in your personal life, Josh?
Nothing good.
So on. No, I mean, what happens in the bedroom stays in the bedroom.
Oh, okay.
50 Shades of Josh, coming summer 2019. All right, well, if you're just joining
47 of them
us-
are red.
If you're just joining us, this is the official podcast of PC Perspective, the website that gives you reviews, news, and if you watch our live stream, pithy commentary and emotional support animals. Actually, Jim, is it possible that animal relief was not what you thought it was, and that people were misusing the room?
It was San Francisco, so I don't want to make any assumptions.
You're like animal
Someone
relief. You
brought
go
in
in, it's
their
like,
emotional support bowl.
clean water, various kinds of animal
Couldn't find
food,
it for
and
hours.
there's Jim
Oh.
relieving himself in the fake grass, and nobody said anything because it's San Francisco, apparently. So we had 3 reviews go up this week. One of which was this card right here, or this is the box. Actually, the card is right here. This is EVGA's RTX 2060 XC Ultra card, which may or may not be
No,
in focus
XC
right
is
now.
new,
I'm
right?
fighting this camera.
They haven't been doing XC as a family before.
I don't think so.
I don't recognize it, and I'm mad that it's not XTC. It truly upsets me on a personal level.
I'm sorry, Jeremy.
You should.
Have you?
Let's
Did you
get a
check
phone
out my
company.
review of this card, Jeremy? Josh? Have you seen the results?
Maybe.
No, that's a no, isn't it? Well, okay. The thing about this card, while you catch up, is it is
What does
factory
XC
overclocked.
stand
The
for? Because like
X-
SSC was super clocked.
Yeah.
This is
It's
just
extra
XC.
clocked.
Extra clocked for
I
her
don't-
pleasure.
I have
Yes.
not asked Jacob what the XC stands for. It's an excellent question. Maybe it stands for excellent. XC for excellence. At least the way I understand it in the product stack, the XC Ultra card is one of the higher clocked, like factory OC cards. So the stock boost clock for the RTX 2060 is 1680 megahertz, I think, and this one is 1830. But that's if you leave it alone. And this has a plus 114% or a 114% power limit. So you can push this farther.
And a wet look
And that was
fan.
what I set out to do. So if you're looking at the specs, there's not a whole lot going on here outside of like the stock 2060, except for that boost clock. Still has the same 160 watt TDP as well, which I thought was kind of interesting, but it definitely can exceed that when overclocked, as I discovered. But right off the bat, I ran stock.
Well, just real quick,
yeah.
Since you're going through pictures, what about the build quality? What about the design? Is it the same? Is it the same PCB as like the reference or the Founders Edition? Does it look a little bit more over designed? I mean, what are the kind of components? I know they've got the dual fan and they've got the heat sink that comes off the back. If you want to show that, Jim. I mean, it's a lot of, kind of scroll back up to the. I mean, yeah, it's an interesting design card, and I mean, it's what, a quarter longer than a regular one. I mean, tell me about it.
That's a very attractive question, Josh, or series of questions, and I'm glad you brought them up because I was going to skim over that part. But yes, remember the GTX 970 cards where a lot of them had that cooler that extended quite a bit past the PCB, which was actually a pretty short PCB for that product.
Yeah.
This is kind of the same thing. The GTX, or the RTX 2070 and 2060, pretty much they're the same core. They're TU-106. They have the same board design. I have not taken the cooler off of this to examine the voltage regulation and stuff like that, but this is a shorter card. You can tell quite a bit from the back. Yeah, it's pretty stock. I mean, they've increased the power limit and boosted the clock, but I would not be surprised if this was pretty standard as far as the board components, but we shall see. I think the only thing that they really emphasized with this was this cooler, which is their dual slot cooler design, uses fluid dynamic bearing fans. This is also available in a single fan short form factor that uses a 2.75 slot, which is actually a full 3-slot design. It has a 3-slot bracket. So it makes it a little bit interesting to find smaller cases that actually have the 3 slots if you're in mini ITX, but standard connectivity to display port, HDMI, dual link DVI, nothing crazy there. Still a 8-pin PCI Express power connector on this. So the 160 watt TDP means it has to take at least 10 watts of power from the slot, in addition to the 150. Unlike, the GTX 1660 Ti, which we looked at a week or so ago, which gets all of its power from the PCI Express power connector, because even though that is a much lower power card at around 120 watts, it still has an 8-pin power connector, which is kind of odd, though it does give those cards the potential for a lot of overclocking headroom.
Sebastian, EVGA was they released that adapter that moved the power connectors to the back of the card for cable management, or to the to the butt end of the card. And with this one having it sort of, it's not in the middle, but it's sort of like 2/3 over for the PCIe connector. How does that look? I mean, was that a troublesome? Because I know you're into aesthetics and stuff. Is that an issue for good looking case layout and cable management?
I will answer that as soon as I can get them to send me one of those adapters, because I don't have one.
Oh, okay.
But as far as like managing cables in the case, it is a little bit problematic unless you have it in a situation where you can just smoothly wrap the power connector around the back of the card. But it's a little odd. I really liked the reference card for that reason, because the Founders Edition RTX 2060 has the power connector right on the back, which reminded me of those old 5000 series ATI cards. I think it was the 5770 that shipped with a 6-pin power connector, like kind of hidden in the back of the like fan shroud. And so you could kind of hide the power connector completely. There was nothing on the top. So it's an interesting choice. I mean, it's because really they're taking a short card and they're putting a long heat sink on it. The same exact card with the smaller cooler that they sell then obviously then suddenly the power connector is on the back of the card instead of being
So
in
it's
the
kind of
middle.
like having a long coat with a short dress.
Yeah. I mean, you never know where
God,
one ends and the other begins. Is this a song reference? Am I missing
You'd
something,
think he'd
Josh?
know
it is
back.
pop culture. Yeah, sorry, but yeah, I don't think the EVGA power thing will fit on that puppy. But anyway, let's talk about performance. Were you, even though it was a kind of reference design? I mean, they probably haven't done. I remember reviewing some EVGA cards back in the past, and they don't do a whole lot with the components. It's just kind of plain Jane, but they still are able to clock it up relatively fast. And is that what happens here? That's me asking you.
Well, yeah, if you look at the results on the first page of results, which is just stock, like out of the box, overclocked settings, or factory overclocked, it basically leapfrogs one or even two cards ahead of the Founders Edition. Like it'll beat the 1070 Ti pretty regularly. Depending on the game, where the first games we're looking at here, Ashes of Singularity is like the worst case for these NVIDIA cards because it very much favors the AMD cards in most of the tests. You move to Far Cry 5, another game that's more Radeon optimized, and it's still beating the Founders Edition, of course, and we have higher clocks here. And in some cases, it's moving up 2 places, even 3 places. And so you're getting very nice gains without doing anything, just because the boost clock is higher. You're dealing with an 1830 megahertz boost clock and a very effective cooler design and GPU Boost 4.0 is extremely temperature dependent. So you want to keep the GPU as cool as possible if you want to sustain higher boost clocks.
That is a lot of back and forth in between this and the GTX 1080, which, of course, when that was released, it was a $699, $599 card. I can't remember exactly. That's $699.
I think it was
right?
technically $499, but a lot of them were more. Like that was what they had listed it at, but I want to say the Founders Edition was $100 more.
Yeah, it was a lot more. But anyway.
Oh, true.
Yeah. But yeah, that's serious. That's that makes you feel a little bit better about the RTX 2060, because when it first came out, I was like, yeah, well, it's kind of worth the price that you pay, but this isn't a whole lot more money than the Founders Edition, and it's battling with that the 1070 Ti, the 1080 pretty consistently.
But Josh, there's more.
But what? Oh,
if you move on to the next page, without any voltage modification, just increasing the power limit to the max 114%, the temperature limit up to the 87C max, you can either run the OC scanner, which I did, and after the second time I ran it with a more aggressive fan profile, I got the plus 90 megahertz core clock that I'd already settled on through trial and error. This thing would go to like 105 and even 120, depending on the resolution and the application, but it was not completely stable across the board unless I'd lowered it back to 90. But that's plus 90 over the factory overclock, which is a pretty heavy overclock for an RTX 2060. And it showed, like I was getting about 2.1 gigahertz sustained boost clock. And I also overclocked the memory, which is something that OC Scanner will not do by default. And we talked about memory overclocking with GDDR6 with the GTX 1660 Ti review, where I just added a gigahertz of effective speed and it was totally stable. With this one, I decided to do the same thing. Even though the RTX 2060 cards by default are faster than the GTX 1660 Ti, we're dealing with that kind of intentional segmentation where you have 12 gigabit per second, and then you go to 14 with the GTX or the RTX 2060 and 2070 cards. Well, this one, I bumped it up another 1 gigahertz, and it was also completely stable. So apparently GDDR6 is quite overclockable, and that definitely helped. So if you look at the results, you're seeing... Yeah, it depends on the game, but there was one game, Far Cry 5 at 1440, where it just edged out a 2070, a totally stock 2070, which is I have EVGA's Black Edition, which is bone stock, no factory overclock. and it's basically tied. If you, it depended on, you know, whether you rounded 1 or 2 digits, whether it was tied or not. And it, at that point, it was beating a 1080 consistently, and it was a close second behind an RTX 2070 across the board. So for a $20 premium over a stock RTX 2060 and a very easy overclock, and maybe not every card will go plus 90, maybe they'll go plus 75. That, you know, even so, it will still give you a huge lift in performance without even a lot of extra noise. I don't crank the fans up to 100% when I overclock these cards. I just give them a slightly more aggressive fan profile. I used EVGA's Precision X1 program for this to do the fans, and it never got that loud. Under standard load, it was under 37 decibels max, and even when I overclocked, it was only somewhere around 38, 40. So a quiet card, excellent out of the box performance because of the factory overclock, but even better if you push it just a little bit farther. And that's again with no voltage modifications. I don't know if I could get maybe a little bit more headroom if I undervolted this card. Maybe I could stabilize that 120 megahertz overclock if I overvolted the card. I didn't get that far, but just with a very basic overclock, I was seeing kind of the same gains I saw over the Founders Edition again over the stock results. So you can get really close to a 2070 with this card for $379. And, you know, the cheapest 2070 you're going to find is going to be $499, but a lot of those, if you check Newegg, they pretty much start at like $550. I think EVGA is one of the few places that you're going to be able to find the card for its MSRP. Their less expensive cards are often kind of going in and out of stock, I've noticed. And that includes this one, which unfortunately yesterday, when I published the review, had already gone out of stock. It was to auto notify status on evga.com, and Amazon was selling it for like a $20 premium. So when you can find it at its list price, it is a heck of a deal. I gave it the editor's choice because of the performance and the fact that it's a very small premium. Like we've seen a lot of these overclock cards that command like a $50 premium or more, and this is
Do you like
going
the
to be hard to
stamped
beat.
EVGA logo on the fans?
On the actual fan blades, not, I actually don't. But
It
I
looks
don't
a
know
little
if that
goofy,
serves any
but
kind
you know,
of
It's like the old
purpose.
Molson Dry ads where they made it look like the beer actually had little drops of water on it. Every time I
well,
see
you know
that
that
style, it makes me think of that.
those bumps would induce some turbulence. I mean, kind of think of a golf ball. I mean, you've got all the bumps on there, and you travel farther, so you're obviously going to travel far. No, that's not right. You may actually accelerate the air moving through and create some turbulence, and that's going to increase cooling. If enough turbulence, it's going to increase the fan noise. But if you say that it's not annoying at all, then you know it would be kind of interesting to do some fluid dynamic type testing on that and see what it actually does, if anything. Or is it
How
just
much
that
extra
because it looks
pressure does it put on that PCI slot? I mean, it's got to be pushing against that PCI slot just a
I
little
know
bit harder.
flies away, man?
You know, those are all excellent questions. I will say it doesn't really spin very fast. This is one of those cards where at idle, there's not spinning at all. And then under load, they spin like as slowly as possible. This cooler is overkill for this card, honestly. But you know, based on like, if you check the review, you can see the load temps and power draw. And actually, just speaking of power draw, the Founders Edition of the RTX 2060 consumes quite a bit more power, and I'm not sure why. And that was consistent. And because I went back and retested both cards, and like at under load, the full draw was 237 with the Founders Edition and only 203 with this card. And I'm guessing that the Founders Edition is maybe a little bit more aggressive with voltage. It does seem to consume a little bit more power at idle and load than I would have expected it to. But this EVGA card goes right back to kind of like the normal power levels that you'd expect to see from a 2060 based on the specs and the TDP. Under full load overclocked, however, I got it all the way up to 289 watts total system draw, which means the card itself was pulling more than 200 watts because this system under load is about 75, 80. So you have to factor in, whenever you measure from the wall, which is not like the ideal way to measure, because you're also factoring in the inefficiency of the power supply. This is a gold rated power supply from Corsair, so that means only about 90% or so optimally of the total draw from the wall is actually what the system is using. So anyway, some sort of math later, it's pulling over 200 watts under full load, I think. Certainly well over the 160 TDP. So using quite a bit of that PCI Express slot power. Moving on, unless somebody objects.
No, please.
We have a Cooler Master MK730 mechanical gaming keyboard review. This was posted by Chris Koch, one of our contributors who does a lot of peripheral reviews for the site. And what's interesting about this is that it is a TKL or 10 keyless version of the flagship Master Keys MK750. And of course, since he had this in for review, since the review was finished, they've announced an MK850, which is that, I think, $200 keyboard that has the pressure sensitive keys. This does not have any such technology. It's using Cherry MX Red, blue, and brown key switches. And of course, it's a compact keyboard. It's 10 keyless. And you can check out Chris's full review. I will give you a quick synopsis. He is a fan. He liked it quite a bit. No real complaints about keycaps, like the spacing of the keys or anything like that, like he did with the last review. He had some reservations about some of the choices they made with the very compact and narrower spacing of their low profile keyboard. But this is just kind of your standard mid high end gaming keyboard with Cherry keys. And he said it was a smaller version of a keyboard I very much enjoyed when it released in 2017, and the TKL lives up to my expectations. And he gave it the Gold Award. So the only concern he has at all is pricing, where he would have liked to see this closer to around $100. I think the list price on this is $119. We'll see if it shows up on sale anywhere. It's actually not far behind the full-size version as far as pricing. So if you like a keyboard with a numpad, that's around $125, $129. We saw it on sale. So not much more expensive for the full-size version of this, but there are quite a few people who like the TKL keyboards too. So you're not really getting a big discount.
I like that he pointed out, because I've learned reading Chris's reviews. He and I think alike. This has got the blue switches, this particular model, and I agree that that's my preferred switch because it's good. It can be good for gaming. It's not the fastest response, but it's a good compromise for gaming and productivity, because I just can't type on those ultra sensitive gaming keyboards. Like my error rate gets too high, so I'd love me some clicky, satisfying clicky blue switches for my keyboard.
Is that because the blues don't actuate as fast, right? Because you get through that initial point where you have the tactile feel. There's like a bump, and then as you depress further, does it actuate, or does it actuate at the bump?
I mean, I'm not a mechanical switch expert, but that's my understanding, is because you feel you have to press more to get an actuation. And when I'm on more sensitive switches, even just because I'm used to resting my hands on the keys, and I'll find myself pressing F1 and then like 1,000 help menus in Chrome open up at the top, or I'll have my finger resting on the D key, and suddenly I look up and my document has 1,000 Ds in it. You have to push much further down to get an actuation, or to get a response, I should say, on the blue switches from the keyboards that I used.
What's everyone else's keyboard preference, Josh? You have
I've got some Microsoft multimedia keyboard 4000 or something.
Just so you're saying membrane.
Yep. Okay. Yep. It's ergonomic, which is makes me happy when I type, because a lot of those ergo heavy duty switches, keyboards are pretty janky, and not to mention expensive. I'd like to eventually have one, but for now, I just use this one.
You sound like you're just begging for me to send you some keyboards to review, Josh.
No,
and I will,
no,
I will put
no,
that on the
no.
list.
Nope.
Yes. Josh explores the world of mechanical keyboards. Actually, there are some mechanical ergonomic keyboards out there, Josh. You would be a great candidate to review one of those too.
Yeah, Papa's cherry.
Jeremy,
Jeez.
what? Now, do
Jeez.
you have
Papa's
Jeremy?
cherry.
I peg you as a guy who would use an IBM Model M
No,
keyboard.
no,
am I right?
God, stop begging.
No, I prefer the washable ones.
Why?
It's
Just like the
literally a K310 from Logitech that when I spill the beer on it, I can go and put it in the sink, and as long as you don't completely submerge it, you can wash it out, and it's okay. And if it finally dies, it was like $35-40. A Model M, I mean, it bloody hell, those things are a couple $100. I wouldn't want to use it. Because, I don't necessarily pay attention when I'm doing things at the computer. And I've got a cat, and the cat hates everything. That's repeating myself. But so yeah, no, I don't really value valuable keyboards because they die. They die horrible deaths.
I guess I don't have to feel as bad about being really nervous to even review the Topre Real Force keyboard I reviewed a couple years ago, which had a list price of $249. Like, I had a 1-year-old in the house when I was reviewing that, and I was just terrified something was going to happen, because half the time when I was reviewing things back in those days, I was like carrying him around, or to get him to quiet down, he'd be in my lap while I was typing up a review. I'm like, this is $250. What if something happens? What if I spill a cup? But
What if pea
I
soup?
reviewed it. Yeah, I reviewed it, and it went right back in the box. Moving on real quick, we have Maury's review of another water block. This is the SwiftTech Apogee SKF Heirloom Series CPU water block. And I'm looking, and there are so many customizable options here. SwiftTech Heirlooms, make it personal, is their slogan, because you can choose green, pink, red, gold, orange, etc., etc. And very premium pack. Oh, it comes in a wooden box. I'm worried about the price on this. There's words like heirloom. I'm seeing wooden boxes. Wonder if this is like $200.
It's $90.
Oh, just $90. Okay,
$90, which he says is high
For the box?
No, for the water block.
Okay.
But he did say it reminded him of a cigar box, which then had me craving cigars. But it's cold
Did
outside.
it smell like cigars? Did they repurpose cigar boxes after smoking the cigars?
Is this a fair trade water block? Is that recovered wood? I've got to know these things. Otherwise, I will stage a protest.
Yeah. Or maybe build a guitar out of it.
He didn't. He just said it was
that
wood.
Teak? Is that rosewood? Is it just a veneer? Is that plastic?
He described it as brown colored. He said brown colored wood. So that's as far as we got.
Particle board does whatever.
But it looks good in the pictures.
It does. It looks too good in the pictures. It makes me suspicious of this $90 price. Because really, if you look at Amazon, or there of course there are less expensive water blocks. I think I've seen $40, $50 water blocks. If you go into the enthusiast websites, and I want to say Frozen CPU, but of course I never know what the status of that site is, and I think there's Performance PCs is the one that comes to mind. I'm not a big liquid cooling aficionado.
Which site had the meltdown a few years ago where there were an employee said he came into the office one day and they were just cleaning out and they took a bunch of money and didn't fulfill the orders. Was that Performance PC
and trashed the place too? That was Frozen PC,
yeah,
or Frozen CPU, yeah.
Okay.
Literally trashed it, threw inventory everywhere and was smashing things and turning over shelves and stuff. So apparently there's some sort of possible substance abuse issue there, and
Hmm.
I was getting all of my news from like forums about that, but I guess they came back. Anyhow, he lists strengths and weaknesses, basically good performance, stock, and overclocked. He liked the customizability aspect, which is nice. Lighting abilities, build quality is good. Weaknesses, he listed price, the lack of nickel plating on the block base plate. I saw that was bare copper. And increased flow resistance resulting from the density of the microchannel design. That sounds pretty bad, but I mean, obviously the performance was still good. But still earned a silver award from Maury. And as we move on to our laundry list of news items for the week, Jeremy, I was very, very pleased when you posted news about the USB Super Friends. Here to save us from the USB IF. And I have my own theory about this, but I will wait until you explain to our viewers and listeners what the heck I'm talking about.
Well, the thing is that it's schizophrenia of some description, because these are the same people. The USB Promoters Group is a part of the USB IF, the ones that brought us USB 3.2 Gen 2X2, and USB 3.2 Gen 2, and USB 3.2 Gen 1, and Lord only knows what else they're going to come up with. However, the USB Promoters Group, the one that actually wants to promote this, brought us USB 4. And not only is it just USB 4, it's the continuation of the insanity, which is 2019, which has seen Microsoft like abandon their browser in preference of Chrome, and now we've seen Intel make good on their promise to put Thunderbolt out. Not necessarily open source, but to release it to any manufacturer that is willing to license it and build it. So USB 4 is going to be built on Thunderbolt 3, which pretty much just explains it all to everyone right there. You now have a full understanding. You're going to have Type-C cables with 40 gigabits of operation, with 2 lanes, 20 with 1. And there will be a certification, and there won't be umpteen billion things you've got to keep track of. It's just going to work, and it's going to make sense to people. It's going to be backwards compatible, so you can grab an adapter. It'll go back to the original Thunderbolt, back to USB 2. It will happily take over a display port, which is something that's been implemented by some people, but not many, using Thunderbolt to do multiple displays over a display port. It's just really, really nice to see, considering what we saw last week, which was just sheer and complete insanity. So I'm really, as much as I'm stoked about this particular thing, honestly, the core of it is that Intel made good on their promise to say, you know what, we're going to release the the Thunderbolt protocol out, and you're now going to be able to implement it on your chips, on your cards, on your whatever. You don't have to come to us to get it. It's so much nicer than it was last week, about 6 days ago.
But it's important too to note that this doesn't, because this isn't USB Gen 4. USB 4 is a separate specification. USB, all that nonsense still remains from last week. USB Gen 3 is still a separate thing with all that craziness. So it is nicer that this particular thing is clearer, but this isn't rectifying or simplifying that's the existing state of uncertainty.
Which brings in the schizophrenic sort of aspect of it, because these are the same bloody people promoting these same sorry, what does that U stand for? Is it universal?
Ubiquitous.
Yes, or hey, that works too. The point is that all of a sudden we've got the same group, the same core group, promoting USB 4, which absolutely totally makes sense, and the other one's promoting USB 3.287659321-8072 Gen 2 Type C X2. They can't both continue in the same area. Like, we can't have these both on the market simultaneously. It'll be insane.
We can and we will.
Yeah, well, I don't want it.
I feel
You
like
know, it seems
won't
like
want one.
Intel. Oh, well, it seems like Intel kind of painted themselves in a corner with Thunderbolt, and this is
True.
really their first good decision with it. I mean, Apple has embraced Thunderbolt, but everyone outside of that, I mean, it's just it's a niche type connectivity. I mean, Dell's got a dock that's Thunderbolt based, and you only can use that with a handful of their latest laptops that support it. And finally, maybe throwing it out here like that, it's going to get some traction and be useful because it's a really good technology.
And remember back when we were young and naive, and this protocol was first announced, and they were talking about asynchronous signals so that they could double or triple or quadruple the bandwidth because the signal wasn't interfering with each other because they were going to be on different phases. I'm struggling. It wasn't Thunderbolt. It was Lightning cable. What was the original one?
Light Peak.
Well,
Light
Lightpeak
Peak.
was the
Thank you.
code word, right?
That was the optical.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But that was what this was supposed to be back 7-8 years ago when it first came out. And, Apple, well, I don't want to speak ill of them because they might take away our titles. But, they kind of did sort of jump on it, and they did it effectively. I won't say that they didn't do it effectively, but they did kind of ruin it for the PC side where we were talking about optical connectors and different phases of light and just stupid amounts of transfer. So, maybe it'll come back. Maybe it won't.
But I don't think Apple ever shipped optical, though. I think by the
No,
time
they
they
didn't.
shipped it, it was copper. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
And this is going
I
back
have to
a while.
wonder if USB 4.0 was literally being held up waiting for Intel to release Thunderbolt 3. And obviously the USB IF knew this when they were releasing their statements about the rebranding. This was probably just a precursor to, hey, 4 is coming, let's rebrand all the 3.x stuff. But that's a disaster. At least USB 4.0 itself makes sense because that was all along that should have been a Type-C connector in the fastest available bandwidth that the technology could permit. So that means 40 gigabit per second Thunderbolt or USB Type-C, and that's exactly what it is. They're not even modifying it at all, are they? This is straight up Thunderbolt 3 being rebranded as USB 4.0, right?
Well, I don't think it's rebranded. It's just that USB 4.0 or not. It's not, again, USB 4.0 is the wrong word. It's USB 4 because that's the specification. USB 4. It's not a 0.0 or a Gen or anything, and it's incorporating Thunderbolt 3 within it, but they're still separate. You will have Thunderbolt 3 devices that are not USB 4. But I think all USB 4 devices will have Thunderbolt 3 within them.
Okay. So just look for USB 4 at a laptop near you. Hopefully by Computex we'll maybe see the first devices with USB 4. Maybe not, though. It takes a while to implement, and they may already have those devices. Certainly by next CES, it'll be USB 4 everything. CES 2020. I can't wait. Well,
There it is.
Jeremy,
There's the damn
also-
thing I was looking for.
what?
I just posted it in the public. It was taking the weight out of Light Peak. When the direct
okay, yeah.
PCI Express came into the Thunderbolt. Yes. Oh, God, did I post more things
What
this
year
week?
was that? February 25th. You posted a lot of things, Jeremy. That was 2011. You posted about some interesting slides that AMD didn't leak out. They released them in an investor meeting, right? And I know that
Yes.
Tech Report reported on this, a bunch of outlets did. Tell me about any new information we may have from this.
Well, Zach and I think similarly, because my first thought was Threadripper the third, but I honestly think Threadripper works just as well. So we know for a fact that we're going to see, we've already seen the Ryzen mobiles, but Ryzen Pro Mobile is going to hit before, well, just after we change the clocks, more or less. So hopefully a couple of companies will pick this up so that I can maybe get one at work, because that graphics are going to be a lot better than the current ones that I'm getting off of Intel. Not to say anything, but yeah, so we know that they'll be out in the very, very near future. What more people are more excited about is about the middle of the year, we're going to see the third generation of Ryzen 3000, which you can find a link to Tim's coverage. We already have just about every single of the initial launch processors leaked with core counts and frequency. But now we're going to get it. And the lovely thing about it is, for everyone, AMD has stuck to their timing. They'd announced a while ago that they were going to do this in the summer before third quarter, and they're planning on it. So you're going to be able to pick up your Ryzen 3000, about the time that it gets really, really hot outside and you don't want to go outside and out of the side of the air conditioning. Also, for people like myself, you're going to see the third generation of Threadripper hit. They haven't put a date on it yet, but they've put the 2019 limitation on it. So before the end of the year, chances are you're going to see Threadripper with even higher core counts, even higher frequency, and maybe, just maybe, leading into the second part of it, a new design for Infinity Fabric. One of the other things they talked about was coming very soon, Zen 2-based EPYC processors for every chiplet fan out there. And this is exciting to people that work in the business because it's cheap. They're literally talking about doubling overall performance per socket, or quadrupling floating point performance in certain applications, and it's a drop-in upgrade. As AMD has been very, very good at for the last several generations. You don't have to buy a new chipset. You don't have to buy a new motherboard. You don't have to redesign anything. You flash your BIOS to update it. You drop your chip in, and away you go. For graphics fans, there wasn't such great detail out of this. I did link to the entire PowerPoint presentation in the post so you can look at it. So sometime between now and 2020, the 7nm Navi will be out. Assume sooner rather than later, but they didn't slap much in the way of information on it other than the leaks we've already seen. And I wish we could give you better information, but we do know it's coming. It's coming very soon.
Now, from this graphics architecture roadmap slide, can we infer anything? Like, look at the line above Vega 7nm. See how it's a little bit, it's highlighted, it's brighter there. Can we infer that from the first white line before Vega 7nm, that could be the start of 2019, and then Vega 7nm, and then the line, is that like up to today's date? Can we come up with some sort of a scale and decide the exact release date of Navi based on this graphic, or no? Is that a stretch?
No.
April 1st.
Because the rumor is E3. Like E3, they're gonna surprise everybody with possibly multiple Navi SKUs and say, here's our new gaming platform, and look, we've got 3rd gen Ryzen, and here's our new Ryzen platform boards, and oh, by the way, Navi, it's here, and it's gonna compete with NVIDIA at whatever price points, and here are the cards, which would be obviously very exciting and make an amazing presentation, but
I don't know. I haven't heard.
I'm just worried about graphics, next gen core. Because if you go back to it, they've decided to go with GCN again, but now it must be GCN squared for next gen. Sorry, Josh. You probably had something
Yeah.
more interesting to say.
I don't know. I just don't see this until being shipped until at least end of summer, because we just haven't heard anything about production. I mean, we knew about Vega 7 nanometer back in summer of 2018, and then that first came out as the professional cards, and then the machine learning and all those areas. But yeah, we haven't heard jack all about actual Navi production. So they may announce something. They may show a basic working card, but I'm afraid it's going to be fall before we see that next generation GPU.
So moving on, Josh, I'm trying to figure out where the voices are coming from. Is that just me hearing this?
No, that's my wife and kids behind me.
Oh, okay.
Invite them in. Let's hear from the Walworth family.
Shall we not?
Oh, okay.
Josh is
Okay.
like, please, no, this is my
You're interrupting on. Yeah, this is Josh's alone time.
So
Just
weird.
he and the voices in
I
his
don't
head.
wait. We don't want that kind of alone time, Jeremy. Josh,
This is-
keep
this
the
is
lights
a
on.
weird- a
Please
weird-
keep your hands above the desk.
Yeah, I've got to unplug the webcam. We'll be right back.
All right.
So back to the news. NVIDIA, and this has become commonplace, obviously, driver updates. Driver updates come out, they support new games, optimizations for old games, and that's exactly what we got with 419.35 WHQL or WICL driver. And in addition to supporting what was the new game? Apex Legends and some optimizations for other games, there is a new bundle, the Triple Threat bundle, where they've added Metro Exodus. So now they have Battlefield 5, Anthem, and Metro Exodus as their gaming bundle. When you buy a 2060 or 2070, you get to choose one. But if you buy a 2080 or 2080 Ti or thus equipped laptop, you get all three. So AMD, I think, still has the advantage with the game bundle, honestly, because they've had, I think, since at least the launch of the Radeon 7, because they were letting us know before that came out, hey, by the way, the Raise the Game fully loaded bundle has 3 games. There's $180 value, so that's the same value that this NVIDIA offer now has. So they've at least matched that. But with AMD's, you get the 3 games with a Radeon 7 or a Vega card or an RX 570, 580, or 590 card. So you could buy a 580 for like $200 and then get 3 games, and you could kind of say that you've subsidized the cost of the card down to about $20, $30. So still a more compelling value argument on AMD's side. Though if you are considering a NVIDIA card, and you want to spend $500 on a 2070, this might convince you to get a 2080 if you don't already have any of these games, which seems doubtful. But anyway, is this at all compelling to anybody?
The nice thing about Battlefield 5, I ordered this tax software, and it was $10 off, and it came with a free copy of Battlefield 5.
I saw that. So you spent negative dollars on that.
Pretty much, yeah.
Can you?
You think EA is trying to get rid of copies and get people playing?
I think you got your money's worth at negative pennies.
My son's happy.
Is that copy
good.
of Battlefield 5 tax deductible on next year's tax return? Because it was part of the H&R Block purchase. Could you say that the value of Battlefield 5 can offset your 2019 income tax?
No.
It's on the same receipts.
It might negatively impact it. I don't know.
How many loot boxes would you have to buy for it to even out?
I don't have an answer for that.
Are
anyway, it's a nice
microtransactions
bundle.
tax deductible?
I just want to jump in here and
Don't
say
evade
that
the
at
question,
no
John.
point should any information about any topic be taken seriously on this show. We are not offering financial advice, tax advice, legal advice, life advice, Just don't.
We can
Just
offer
turn-
life advice. Why can't we
No.
offer life advice?
No, not even that advice.
No, just turn it off.
Not even Jim's advice right there. Don't
Go
take that.
go back to the YouTube
Yeah,
homepage.
don't
Find a
listen to Jim.
suggested
Don't listen
video.
to Jim. All right. Hey, did anybody check out Hard OCP's look at undervolting the Radeon 7? I think this was published at like a week and a half ago. I know Jeremy just put up news on our site back on the 6th, which I guess that was yesterday. But this was an interesting read. I read this when it was first posted and kind of doesn't work quite the way you might think, or at least I would think, knowing nothing going into this about undervolting. And the sort of the results you actually get, Jeremy.
Well, see, the thing is that one of the major throttles when you're overclocking something is the chip hits a temperature limit. And when the chip hits a temperature limit, it slows itself down to, prevent itself from making pretty pictures inside of your case. Both the fire type and the smoke stains left afterwards. So in some cases, and this is by far not the only chip that this is actually a thing for, by undervolting what the manufacturer set it at, you're actually providing a little less power, which means a little less heat, which means that it can actually sustain slightly higher clocks, or in some cases, significantly higher clocks before it hits that thermal envelope. And I'm trying to say this in a very nice way because one of the reasons that people have been bitching and screaming about Radeon 7 undervolting is that it might have been put out at a slightly higher voltage than it should have for certain reasons. But again, it's not the only chip that's been like this. So by feeding it a slightly little bit less power, all of a sudden you're starting to see that you might not hit the peak that you were expecting, but it stays there. So as you can see there on the default, the clock is actually hitting a higher frames per second for a very brief period of time. But other than that, it actually has to back down a bit so that it has to keep within its thermal envelope. By undervolting it, and so there's some other games that provide a little bit more than this, but even this one you can see 4 frames a second and significantly better response rates. And at the same time, you can also see that the temperature, it gets a little bit higher, but because the combination of the amount of volts going into it, which it normally would immediately start to drop, but you've already dropped it, allows it to maintain. Now, Radeon Chill is a different thing. Both of these are perfectly accessible straight through your latest Radeon graphics driver, your Adrenaline. And Chill is better. It's overall trying to reduce the amount of power that the card is drawing. Not by putting a hard cap on the amount, but just overall reducing the amount of power that draws. So Wolfenstein's a perfect example here. By reducing it and trying to keep the card chill and keeping the fans down and the noise down, you see a hard drop in performance. Although, to be honest, an average rate of 85 frames a second, you're not going to notice unless you're on a fancy monitor. But you can see the default in the undervolting is fighting it out tooth and nail, and by giving the card less power, you're seeing at least as good performance at default, if not better. It's something to play around with. Like, overclocking becomes, and Josh has talked about this in the way that he hates doing memory reviews. When you start overclocking, there are so many variables that you have to play with. And one of them that not a lot of people think of is, well, what if I feed it a little bit less power? What starts to happen? And in this case, it really looks like the Radeon 7. It's worth playing around with. And, if you got a nice stable overclock that you like, try just dropping the voltage down a little bit and see what happens. More than likely, you're going to be pleased with the results. So when are you going to start doing that, Sebastian? on every
I
card
know. I know.
that you've ever reviewed.
And then there's
from
that new Radeon 7 water block that came out, I think, last week. That looks really nice. That just opens up another world of possibilities with this, because you can put this thing fully underwater.
No, don't
play with
underwater
the
that.
voltage.
Don't underwater. Make sure that you keep the water up.
You know what I mean? The full block. Come on, Jeremy.
Yeah.
Yeah. The thing that I found the most interesting was that just by undervolting to whatever you can, like, I think he ended up at, was it 1.1 volts? It wasn't like, or maybe 1 volt. Played around with like 9.9, something like that. You get such higher minimum speeds on the core. Like the standard, whatever it's using for its algorithm for how it's measuring core versus the thermal threshold or voltage limitations of the card, it drops down. In some games it was dropping down to like 80, 85 megahertz, and then coming back up again and dropping down and coming back up. And with the undervolt, it was way up. I think the lowest I saw was like 700, sometimes like 1600, 1400. So you're never really losing your primary boost clock speed. It's at the expense of higher thermals, because the power draw and the thermals were higher when undervolted, which was kind of odd. Not across the board, but in most cases, because it was just seeing this additional headroom and using it and drawing additional power to make it work.
It's trying to cut the power a bit, but the power's already been cut.
Yeah.
So it gets to get a little bit warmer.
It makes you wonder, like, how much more optimization could have been done to this card. Maybe ship it at a lower voltage so it could actually hit a higher clock speed instead of shipping it out as is with a peak clock of 1800, but an actual boost clock, I think that was somewhere around 16, maybe it was 1650, 1750, somewhere in there. But it could have been more aggressively clocked. But the nice thing is it's built into the software. Anybody who downloads the driver has this. It's kind of buried, though. This is not the most obvious feature. You have to know where to look. There's a tab you have to go into, and then it's within a secondary set of options. But you can do a lot of tweaking with the actual curves and the voltage, and it's just very interesting. And I would absolutely trade some additional fan noise and a little bit higher power draw for smoother gameplay, because if nothing else, not having those dips in the speed is going to result in fewer of those like higher 99th percentile frame times, so fewer of the kind of stuttering, which, you know, plagues games when you're dealing with that thermal limit. Not nearly as bad as it would if you were hitting a VRAM limit, but of course you're not going to do that with the Radeon 7. Josh, did you have any thoughts about this? Have you ever played around with the Radeon Chill or undervolting on any of your AMD cards in the past?
I really have not, but I mean, it makes sense. I mean, they kind of, I mean, you're winning the silicon laundry if you're able to undervolt successfully, because AMD is trying to make a card that under most circumstances is going to perform in a certain way, and they're going to get the most number of chips out that are going to work by applying this much voltage to it. And so it's a, you know, it's a statistician's dream or nightmare, whatever you want to consider, about where these cards should be set, where they get the most money out, where they get the most, you know, the best results in terms of yields and dies, yields and bins rather. And so, yeah, if you've got a really good chip and you undervolt it, then you're not adding more heat, and transistor switching performance potentially could improve, and especially if you've got good cooling. So it's you know, it's a neat trick. It's a good toolbox that AMD provides for those who really wish to tweak the stuff like this. So it's, you know, if you're bored some Saturday afternoon, you got a couple hours to burn, and you think, you know, let's optimize this puppy. You've got the ability to do that, and potentially have some nice gains, especially at that, you know, the minimum levels of frame rates, to, you know, give you a better experience. You may not have much higher average. But if you're lifting up that bottom 95th to 99th percentile, it has, concrete returns in what you experience when you're playing a game.
Yeah, but it takes time, like you said, and that's something that I don't really have a lot of. So I have not played with that yet, but I should, especially when we get some new AMD cards out. That's another one of those interesting aspects. Like instead of like with NVIDIA, where it's pretty easy to just raise a power limit and increase the fan profile and have the GPU boost kind of figure things out on its own. And we've seen really good gains there. There's not as much headroom with straight overclocking with Radeon 7. So I think that's where the undervolting argument becomes very interesting, where you can sort of game the system a little bit by lowering that voltage and having the card try to compensate by increasing the core clocks. But let's move on to probably the longest title for a news post we've had this year so far. Microsoft rolling out ret pooling optimizations update to reduce performance impact of Spectre 2 mitigations. How exciting. This sounds like enterprise stuff, Jeremy.
It's enterprise because he's on PowerShell.
I know.
Yep.
Well, isn't PowerShell the default command line now? Like it replaces...
Not if you change it back, Jim, damn it.
Well, that's why I use the word default. But
it's got colors.
Yeah, it's prettier. You can
You call this pretty? Look at this screenshot.
Hey, don't
black
don't
and white, black and red text on a blue background with.
Don't you try to impose your beauty standards on me.
That's true.
Unless you're talking, green text on black, in which case, all right, I can understand.
I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
I can get back to that. Yeah.
But anyway, Spectre, Jeremy.
Whoa, scary, kids, scary. It is. So ret pooling is, and honestly, I still have not had the time to look into this because this is something that you do have to sort of look at. But Microsoft has put out a new update, and thankfully it's back to the point where there's a knowledge base article attached to it, which will bloody well tell you what it does. In this case, it's changing the way the speculative execution that was the core of Meltdown and Spectre and Rowhammer and the one we're going to bring up in a bit, that is just all so much fun. So this is changing the way that how the memory manager handles things. It's called the dynamic value reallocation table. Say that 5 times fast. The idea is that it's putting a little bit of a separation between it, but not having the same performance impact that we've had on the ways that they've sort of worked around it previously. They're saying about 25% faster than what it is now if you've got a Spectre mitigation put onto your machine, which is good. That is going to add up to a huge amount if you've got a server farm going and you're serving hundreds, thousands of customers. 25% is nothing to sneer at. It's a huge amount. It's new. It hasn't really been tested. I mean, Tim put this up, Tuesday? Yeah, the 4th. So we haven't really seen a lot of testing being done with it, but it should, in theory, put them on par back with what the Linux performance is right now, where the mitigations were much easier to implement and didn't have such a huge impact. So we're going to see over the next, couple of weeks, month, how effective it is, what side effects it might or might not have, and just how well it protects you. But for now, I mean, honestly, it's really good news to have something that helps protect you that isn't going to have such a huge impact on your end user. Have you been playing with this at all, Josh?
No. And I know that I'm very helpful with this discussion by saying that, but it's
Well, you're the
spectrum
same as me.
mitigation.
You haven't had the time to look, right?
Yeah, but it's we run enterprise stuff, and it's Spectre is one of the things we probably worry least about. Maybe I'm stupid, but when you've got users that, because of GIS programs and other software from like Esri, that simply won't work if you do not give them local admin, there are far scarier things out there for
Absolutely.
us.
I
Yeah.
I am reimaging on a slow week, maybe a half dozen machines because someone clicked on that link.
Yeah.
And they don't even have local admin. That's escalated privilege from a vulnerability, let alone, local admin is just a sheer nightmare.
Yeah.
Well, this segues neatly into another post about something called Spoiler, which I had not heard about until reading this. And of course, after this post went up, Intel reached out, and we have appended the post with their statement. Which what do you know about Spoiler, Jeremy? I know I'm leaning heavily on you for these news posts.
All right. Well, this was the perfect bookend to Tim's post, where it's like, oh, hey, look, we've actually got a good mitigation. It's so much, but you just don't look over there because there's a whole new one that we didn't even know about. And it's based off Rowhammer, which really, really friggin' sucks because the direct memory reading can turn into some impressively horrible things. Especially if, like, say, there's been some new attacks lately that depend on the PowerShell that everyone's making fun of the picture of. And essentially, it's not even installing anything on your machine. It's just running a frickin' PowerShell script in your memory, and the only time it actually writes to the drive is when it's shutting down. And when you boot up, the first thing it does is load itself into memory and erase itself from your drive. This is just frickin' magic, and it makes everyone so happy. But Spoiler matches similar to what the Rowhammer did, which we've talked about before. And so any of the mitigations for Meltdown Inspector, nothing. Absolutely nothing. The original report suggested that there was no way you could fix this. You could not do a software implementation. You couldn't do a firmware implementation. It's a flaw of the architecture itself. And this is coming from researchers at Worcester, Polytechnic, Massachusetts, and Lubeck. Intel reached out and said that they expect that, just like with the Rowhammer style attacks, there are ways that they can produce some software updates that will, and by software we're talking more BIOS updates and basic, like, you're not looking at errata and weird flashing, and just basic updates that should help protect you. This was also, and are they still around? It also seemed like a knee-jerk reaction. That, yes, totally, don't worry about it, we can fix it. But at the same time, there is no reason, because they have found some mitigations against Rowhammer. So since this is similar, I've got no reason to doubt that they can't come up with some sort of a solution. I just don't know a timeline. These are getting down to basic architectural choices that were made by Intel, AMD, and ARM several generations ago to increase performance by speculation. This particular one is only for Intel chips. So any Intel chips that do the speculative branch prediction are going to be a problem. ARM and AMD, because they went a different way, this particular one isn't going to get them. That doesn't mean that there isn't one out there that we'll fear about tomorrow, but for now, they're a good choice. So, hey, go buy an EPYC processor. you can actually get one, and it's protected from this. And when Intel catches up, you can go back to them if you really, really want to. It's just the amount of as Josh said, that is a pure problem. Is PEBCAC problem exists between keyboard and share, but these ones and some of the basic stuff from the servers that they still haven't addressed for a year and a half from now, or it was announced last Christmas, not the one just passed, but the one previous to this. Those are still huge vulnerabilities. We're not patching to the way we should be, in some cases because of the performance impact, in some cases because, well, I get lazy sometimes. And they just keep coming and coming and coming and coming. It's a scary world out there, kids. Don't
Who'd have thought that highly
mama-
complex designs would have flaws in them? The original x86, CISC architecture was really nicely laid out. It was pretty simple, and it worked. And then they just kept cobbling onto it, and it now works by PFM, pure freaking magic. And yeah, I mean, they put so many little performance enhancing things, and it just the level of complexity and the chance for something like this slipping in is just, I mean, it just rises exponentially. But
yeah,
anyway,
real
throw
quick,
enough chips and software at it, and
let's talk about something more interesting.
Before we jump to that, just because the chat, some folks are pointing out, and I've seen this reports. I haven't experienced it myself, although I haven't been doing a lot of gaming personally, but just not related to vulnerabilities, but more just Windows updates in general. People are reporting that a cumulative update for Windows 10 1809, it's KB 4482887, has caused some issues with a lot of games. They say it's graphics performance, frame rate drops, mouse stuttering, input lag. So I do recall seeing a Reddit thread on that, and the chat reminded me. So be on the lookout for that. If you haven't installed that update, maybe that's one to use one of the newly introduced delay features and see if you can avoid installing that until they've figured out what's up with that. So thanks to the chat for pointing that out.
Interesting.
Windows 10
there's
update
news out
went
there.
poorly.
Yeah, who would have thought? Looks like early this morning, Tom's Hardware had a story about that called Windows 10 update causing severe in-game performance issues. And there's more information there. And how to uninstall the update, which is, we should all be used to that by now. If you use Windows 10 for any period of time, you probably know how to uninstall unwanted updates. I was doing that back in Windows 8.1 because of all the Windows 10 ads that were being installed on my system. But that's another story. And by the way, another item that was not on our list, speaking of Windows 8 and Windows 10, cue the sad music, because Skylake has been retired. It's no more. It's been a long road.
You'll never take 007 away.
No, and you'll take Windows 8.1 away from me, from words that I can't properly express about my cold dead hands and things like that. But that's the annoying thing about 7th gen, because Intel had Windows 8.1 drivers for 7th gen, like CABI or KB, however it's pronounced, Lake processors for the integrated graphics and full OS support. And then it was announced that, 7th gen only supports Windows 10. And I wonder who may have gotten involved there. And then those drivers never left the beta stage and were pulled from the website. So officially, Skylake was the last platform to support anything other than Windows 10. And now you're just all expected to, like lemmings, install Windows 10 on your computers and just pretend that freedom of choice when it comes to operating system updates is a thing of the past. And I digress. So let's talk about some good news for a change, like GPU price correction. Now, Josh, do you think there's anything to this idea that the graphics card vendors are under some sort of inventory pressure as we look at this beautifully stocked case full of graphics cards?
Yeah, which you know, a year and a half ago would have been absolutely bare. Gosh,
Yeah.
I wonder. I mean, it's just the big problem with any kind of graphics is that the lead time to adjust to changes in market pressures is so stinking long. We're talking 24 weeks now. Well, 20, yeah, probably 20 to 24 weeks for a modern GPU to go through the entire production round. I mean, it's a huge amount of time. And you've got to plan for that. And you've got to work with TSMC and Global Foundries and Samsung. And you've got to, you know, plot out all this stuff, and you got to figure out how many wafers you got to order. And then you got to wait. You have to wait 3, 4, 5 months, depending on the products and then the amount of um, wafers that are available to you. It's just ludicrous. And so yeah, I think that they thought that the crypto market would last longer than it actually has, and you know, they ordered a whole lot more chips than really the market can sustain. And then add on top of that the relative kind of unpopularity, not unpopularity, but the less than positive um, results for the RTX series. AMD not having anything new except the Radeon 7, which is 7 nanometer, and those are still extremely rare. You know, it just all comes together to have, they've got a ton of inventory. And yes, this price reduction is really, really, really needed because there's still a lot of old cards out there. I mean, GTX 970 is a good product, and a lot of people have it, and they probably still run it. I know a friend of mine just finally upgraded to an RTX. You know, the price has kind of dropped a little bit, but you know, he had a GTX 970, and I think everybody knows somebody that had it. I mean, it was a good card, and even though the whole memory thing with the last 512 megs of memory was siphoned through a straw, um, you know, it was still popular, and then people still use GTX 700 series. I've got a GTX 780 in the wife's machine that a friend comes over and plays games on every once in a while. It just, there are so many good cards for a lot of modern games that it doesn't always make sense to upgrade. And now maybe we're finally getting into a point where prices coming down enough. We've got enough next generation games that are either just being released or will be out soon, that people are finally starting to get the bug. And we'll see that, you know, we'll see these volumes of unsold products, you know, shrink. But you know, if we get some other kind of strange little boom, it's going to take them a while to, you know, kind of ramp up production again to meet it. But for right now, I think they're just kind of holding on to their horses.
I'm looking for all of these amazing deals. At least I'm not seeing them on Newegg, because on the Nvidia
Oh, it won't be
side,
for a while.
yeah, it's like business as
I
usual.
don't expect to
and
see
the
this for a bit. A week
10
or
series.
two, and sorry.
No, I was going to say 10 series is pretty much disappearing. I mean, there's still a lot of
Yeah.
1060s, a lot of 1060s, but 1070, these prices are ridiculous. Like starting at $400 or so. The $329 1070 I'd been seeing off and on is apparently currently sold out again. So they're back up to being way, way too much, especially considering the GTX 1660 Ti is giving you greater than 1070 performance for $279. And
Yeah,
they're still asking. I'm looking at the AMD side, like the RX 590s are at least a little bit cheaper at $249. Those had been, I think, selling for more like $259, $269. The XFX one that I have that we reviewed is still at $280. That's more expensive, but I mean, these are not like crazy good prices at all. There's some rebate deals and things out there, but I would like to see that translate into some of these, like, you know, the Vegas 56 selling for 279 occasionally, or I had seen word of 1060 selling for around $160, but that's clearly not on Newegg. And then half the cards I look at on Amazon are at Slate, like premium over the list price. So
I think this is
It'd be
more
nice to
long
see.
term, and people sort of sitting there, like by people I mean the board manufacturers that are turning around and giving to MSI, VGA, Pallet, whoever. We've got this huge amount of stock. We can try and convince the tax guy it's a loss and maybe get some off that. We can try and talk to NVIDIA and get some promotional pricing to try and get rid of it. But what I'm saying is, next generation, you're going to have to make sure that these sell. Because right now I'm stuck with a warehouse full of stuff no one wants. So I think it'll be slow if it happens. But
you know what
let's
people
hope it
do
does.
want? You know what people do want? They want fast storage. And this is not a new story. I think Samsung announcing mass production of the EUFS 3.0 as I think that might have been a week or two ago that first broke. But looking at the chart here is fascinating because just performance relative to previous generations of it, and also with the control being this My Digital SSD SPX M.2 NVMe drive, and looking at what eMMC 5.1 can offer, which is admittedly not very much. It's pretty interesting to see, legitimate performance from this, which can be an embedded storage format that we can find in phones and other small devices. Let's see here. Sequential reads 2,100 megabytes per second, writes of 410 megabytes per second, which obviously are not astonishing, but very impressive IOPS, 63,000 random read IOPS, 68,000 random writes. And if you look at what eMMC can do, you're talking sustained, 250 megabytes per second on reads, only 125 on writes, and IOPS of like 11 to 13,000. So anemic numbers, of course. Still, this is nowhere near what a fast M.2 like NVMe drive can do, but for embedded storage solutions like onboard storage in a smartphone or a tablet is going to be a welcome change to see near desktop-like performance. Obviously, well above SATA performance, not necessarily from IOPS. We saw higher IOPS, I think, at the end of the SATA generation, but 2.1 gigabytes per second reads are nothing to sneeze at.
That's
Have you
smoking
seen
fast.
have you seen any news of anything actually implementing this yet, or this is just them kind of announcing the technology, I guess?
I think it was just the announcement.
Yeah.
It'll be
Well,
some 8 months before we see it, but you got to figure that the next generation coming out next spring of next year, featuring new ARM processors and enhanced 7 nanometer stuff, that they may have this on there, and boy, that's going to be smoking fast memory for a cell phone.
I remember when I got my Nexus 6 and I did not understand at first why it felt so sluggish to me, even though it had, at the time, like current gen hardware and was on paper significantly faster than what I had been using. I'd come from a Nexus 5, and it was the first Android phone, I believe, that shipped with always on full disk encryption, like full device encryption, and it just made the thing crawl. It had also very slow storage. I remember running storage benchmarks on it, and it was anemic. That's one of those things where I don't think people realize, yes, smartphone SoCs get faster and faster every year. Yes, they've moved through the different memory standards, and there's additional memory bandwidth available. They're always managing, the thermals and the available power and trying to optimize for battery life and so on as far as performance goes. But storage performance on smartphones is pretty bad, is really bad. And I don't know if it's any better on the Apple side. There are really not the same benchmarks available on the Apple side, I don't think. I don't remember. I think AnonTech had their own custom code written to do benchmarking on Apple's file system for the iPhone, but it's one of those things where once we have fast storage to go along with these fast processors to actually take advantage of it, I think you're going to see huge gains in just everyday responsiveness and usability of smartphones that, I mean, right now it's the equivalent of using like an older generation spinning hard drive as far as the actual throughput of some of this on like embedded storage. So I look at stuff like this and think, finally, we're going to have smartphones that actually perform like a 2.5 gigahertz, like high-end 8-core system should perform, especially considering they're only running at like, 1440p resolution.
Yeah, until
So.
you fold it wrong and you break it.
And then, yeah,
'Cause
what
that's
is the
gonna be a
resolution of
thing
that
now.
Samsung? Does anybody know have they posted the full specs of the Galaxy Fold? Because on day one, they had nothing. It was like a picture and some like advertising jargon, but they weren't actually giving like full display resolution for the phone, like when unfolded. I know Huawei announced their resolutions, which were surprisingly low considering how big the display was. But I'll have to look here, see if Galaxy Fold has any specs. Because that's a nightmare to me. A device like that I'm paranoid, but I've also dropped my phone many, many, many times since I've had my first smartphone, and I've kept my phone in a case most of the time. I briefly flirted with the case-free lifestyle with my iPhone 6, and I think it was like the first week I had it, I dropped it in a Mexican restaurant. It landed face down, of course, and it skidded across the floor, ended up under the bench, and when I moved it to get the phone slid on its face across the tile floor under the weight of the chair. So needless to say, it was permanently defaced, and it was just one incident, just slipped out of my hand and it was toast. If I had a $2,000 phone that I could not even fit a case on, and who knows what would a screen protector situation on one of these folding phones look like either.
Well, I mean, we also need to not pretend here. This phone is not going to ship in volume. There's not, nobody's going to buy it. Yes, it's going to be out there. Some people will buy it. They will have all the YouTube influencers showing off their videos. Maybe some lunatics in the Middle East will like show this off or something. But this is not, this is a chicken and the egg thing. This is the technology has been teased for years. Let's get a product on the market. This is not a problem, I think, that is practical or going to be something that we have to deal with. The people buying this don't care that they'll just buy another one if they ruin it.
Oh, right. Or if they're even buying it, I'm sure that if they're at a high enough level, Samsung will just send them the unit to advertise as this sort of aspirational device.
Oh yeah, I mean, in terms of how most people will see this phone, it'll be through select seeded marketing or review influencer units, however you want to call it. But
does that include you, Jim? Is that what you're trying to say?
No, Samsung
only the most.
They don't return my calls.
Only the most powerful. All right. Well, I'm looking at the specs of the Galaxy S10 Plus, their new kind of like mainstream flagship phone. Very impressive specifications, and the screen like the actual pixel density is massive on this thing. The actual screen resolution is 1440 by 3040, so 19:9 ratio, still with that 1440 width, and that's a 522 ppi density approximately. And if you look at the Fold, for that entire folded out 7.3-inch display, only a 414 ppi, and it's 1536 by 2152, so considerably lower. It was the same story with a Huawei phone. They're not putting out these 600 ppi incredibly dense AMOLED displays with these folding phones. You're actually getting kind of like 2014 screen resolutions blown up on a huge 7 or 8 inch screen. So obviously, if you want to follow Apple's argument, I think it's 328 is what they call retina, like the pixels per inch, before you can no longer see it from a normal viewing distance. But they were also selling people on retina back when their phone had a 4-inch screen. So actually, no, the iPhone 4 still had a 3.5-inch screen, didn't it?
Yeah.
So you pretty much couldn't see anything, let alone pixels on that phone. But finally, last but not least, of course, Microsoft And this is not, if you're watching the video stream, I don't believe this is a picture of Ryan Trout, but you never know where that guy might pop up. Somebody is wearing a HoloLens in this picture. And that's another device that, as Jim mentioned, something about things that will never ship in volume and will be kind of in the hands of the influencers. This is a $3,500 proposition for their revised AR device. Has anyone on this podcast ever experimented with a HoloLens at all?
No.
No.
Not. Any AR
I've
experimentation at all?
had
Well,
difficulties convincing my bosses to spend the $2,500 to $3,500 to let me experience it.
and
Actually, you know what? I have had. Go ahead.
Oh,
Go
I
ahead.
was going to say,
Yeah.
I mean, everyone experiences AR because it's on your phone now. Or do you mean head-mounted AR?
I guess I meant head-mounted AR, but
Okay.
yeah.
Well,
I mean,
you
I've
just
experienced.
duct tape the phone to your face.
Well, Google will sell you an attractive cloth-like device that
Cardboard
lets
box.
you shove your phone in front of your face. Yeah, or the cardboard one. I was thinking of Google Glass, I think is what it's called. Can't remember. There's one that's like sort of
Yeah.
this gray cloth, and you put your phone in it. Has like magnifying lenses for your eyes. No, the one AR experience I've had, actually, that I can remember is with my Nintendo 3DS. I got what was it called? Bravely Default, and it came with an AR card, and you basically, the character from the game would like emerge from your table or whatever you were looking at through the camera on the 3DS, which is a miserable camera, but you could see your character walk around and interact on your table. It didn't do anything. It didn't accomplish anything in the game, but it was reasonably convincing, I guess. There's a lot more practical uses of AR. I know that they were talking about adding AR to Google Maps, like if you're actually walking in a city and for some reason are getting really good GPS reception that's very accurate, unlike if you're ever in a big city with tall buildings, such as Chicago, where it will tell you randomly that you're on one street and then it tells you that you're on the other street. But the idea of superimposing, like, turn here as you're walking would be nice. I know when I was walking in Las Vegas a couple of nights, I was constantly looking down at my phone, like, when do I turn? Oh, it's this street. Okay. And I was looking up, looking down. So it'd be nice
Well,
to
and
just
then you
have it.
realize one of the snappers had taken over your phone and was directing you somewhere you wanted to go, but you didn't intend to.
I ended up in a couple of alleys, but it was fine. I mean, I only got mugged a couple of times. It wasn't a big deal.
Well, I think too,
Right.
just to clarify the story with HoloLens, I don't think we actually ever got to the point here.
We didn't.
It's the second generation. It is much smaller, much lighter, much more comfortable, has a wider field of view. Same price points, again, very high, very specialized. So you're not going to buy this as a consumer. But from what I've heard of it from people with experience like Mary Jo Foley and Paul Thurrott, they seem to think it's a good improvement. And Microsoft is clearly pivoting to make this more attractive to businesses and engineering, even like financial analysis, things like being able to visualize data in front of you in a way that makes it more helpful. I don't know practically how that
And
works.
hey, your
but
proctologist might benefit from it too.
Okay.
Let's get into the real world. Let's get our hands dirty. Not
Oh, God.
literally. I mean, you'd be wearing gloves, but
He's supposed to wear gloves.
Oh
Okay.
God. Jim trying to add substance to our mindless discussion about things and basically just trashing AR and Microsoft in general. Which
Yeah.
I know
All right,
I'm
well, we've been
guilty of.
going for almost 2 hours. Let's get to the picks of the week here.
Okay. Jim, you're first.
Okay. So mine is I've been playing with 10 gigabit networking for a while. This is our 10G base T. So
Gee, I wonder why.
Right. Yeah. And prices have continued to come down, and this is another lower cost NIC option. It is the Siba. Anybody know how to pronounce that? I don't know, but It's a
Potemkin.
card that is the product is Syba SYBA, but it's using a Quantia 10G base T chipset, so you get your 10 gigabit NIC. It's a by 4 PCIe card. It's $92.99 on Amazon right now, and even at MSRP, it's still $100. So it's another lower cost option, similar to those Asus ROG cards that came in, I think, around 100, 120. So if you're looking for a lower cost 10 gig NIC, even if you don't want to invest in the switch and you don't want to spend all that extra money, you can still directly connect like your PC to your NAS and still get the 10 gig on that connection. So there's options there. So, you know, you buy 2 of these and, you know, you can use Cat6 cabling and you've got 10 gigabit to a nice big storage array for a couple $100.
Beautiful. Jeremy, you have a problem?
Yeah, I do. I really friggin' do. Because it is almost the exact same.
Why is this so much?
It's damn
is this
close.
is this supposed to be $100? I guess this is a third party.
No, it wasn't, but it is. But mind you, buy this classic one, and it'll cost you a lot more than $200.
Oh yeah,
but
I saw that.
They are almost perfect. They are almost perfectly matched. And I didn't have to pay extra money for no RGBs. Not a single RGB on this thing. It is lovely. It's slightly heavier. And honestly, when I first grabbed it, it's like my hand just suddenly, needed to be washed for a second because it felt exactly like it should.
I don't know what that means, and I won't ask.
Black gray.
Yeah, and again, for the audio, for the audio listeners, we're talking, of course, about the Logitech MX518 Legendary, the relaunch of the classic 518 mouse.
Yeah, the 800. But if you click on the black gray there,
on the black gray,
it will take you.
Oh, the different color. I see
the
there's two
color.
different options. Black.
No.
Gray. Ooh.
That takes you.
$49.98.
But that's the original one.
Order
that's the 1800 DPI.
Okay.
Apparently, someone's realized they're going to have to dump off the old stock. I might have to buy that just to test it out.
Yeah, just to have a spare.
Yeah,
what do you think of the
$40
change to that appearance? Like, I never really understood what they were doing with the appearance of the top of the mouse, where it kind of looks like it has holes in it, or those are not textured, right? They're just kind of like.
No, it was more like sort of a metallic look where you've got dents in metal and a little bit of wear on it. There is no textural difference. It's the same, but it was just sort of metal that's been stressed a bit.
Okay.
And they didn't do that on this one. I may have to.
I don't remember. What is the MSRP on the Legendary supposed to be? Didn't it launch at like $79 or something?
I thought it was 89, but yeah.
Oh,
well, this is Canadian money too, by the way.
Oh, right. So we're talking. Yeah, this isn't real.
But I am very, very tempted to pull the feet off of this, see if the screws are the same. There are how many screws? 1, 2, 3, 4, and see if I can swap the top off and put the old top on the new top. On the new base and see how it goes.
Well, Logitech told us that they went to the old tools and used the exact same tool set.
I am going to test it.
Yeah,
I can already tell you the screws don't match.
That's not surprising, but the parts should be the same in terms of like just fitting in the same slot.
I am probably going to do this. All right.
Okay,
Josh, you
what you got?
Hey, now this,
your own obsession, didn't you?
You need to take this kind of with a grain of salt and watch it. Don't click on it and buy it, right? This is the Vega 56 really crappy air boost cooler from MSI. It's not, it's a little loud, a little hotter. But last week it was for $269. And if you keep watch on it, it could drop again. So if you really wanted a Vega 56 and have that sweet, sweet HBM memory, and keep your eye on this, because it will drop again. Hopefully within the next couple of weeks. But, Again, waiting for those video card upgrades. And 329, I wouldn't do it, but 269, hell yeah.
At least
Sweet,
one
sweet HBM.
person was very upset with this card, though. 2 out of 5
Uh,
eggs.
I see that. A very negative review. Shocking. I wonder if it's even a verified purchase. Last but not least tonight, the biggest news in the gaming world today was that for whatever reason, Blizzard, who seemed to have turned their back on their old classic games such as Warcraft, the original Warcraft, and Diablo, never releasing these digitally or doing anything to update them beyond a certain point. Today, you can buy through Good Old Games, GOG.com, the original Diablo. They have done their
Sit a
GOG
while
thing.
and listen.
Yeah. So
that had the best music, though.
It
It
did.
requires battle.net. Interesting. Or the multiplayer, I see. Okay. So I don't really understand why Blizzard would not want to do this themselves, but I'm happy that you can just buy this and not have to worry about getting like no CD executables and copying the files from the CD. Because I have a copy of Diablo. In fact, I have 2 old copies of Diablo, one of which is behind me. And
look at that
my
sweet
wife
3D effects.
absolutely loves this game. Anytime I ever get it set up and installed on a computer and she sees it, she's playing this game for like the next 2 or 3 hours straight. And it's a pain in the neck because you have to have a computer with a CD drive, or you have to have ripped the files off the CD. And that's if you want to do it legitimately, because of course you could probably go find a copy online somewhere.
Okay, Josh and I are
abandonware
confused
website or
now.
something, but what?
Yeah, but did
Josh and I both have. Oh, Hellfire. The
it was the only expansion, and by Sierra. It wasn't by Blizzard, but it was good. Got lots more stuff.
Yeah, a lot harder. Isn't Hellfire considerably higher difficulty?
Yeah, I guess so. But yeah,
So far, no
You'll have to
Hellfire,
click
just the original
significantly
Diablo.
quicker.
that's too bad. Yeah, Sierra's not really around too much anymore. So
No, they're not.
Actually, that might have been one of the things that broke my original MX518 was the amount of clicks I put on that thing.
Yeah.
Does it still have the inventory bug where you can infinitely spawn things if you can, drop them and pick them up at the same time?
So when you
That was
buy
patched.
this,
That was patched past like the first or second revision of the game, wasn't it? Sorry,
I played
Jim.
it, back before.
When you buy this, you get 2 options. You get the original, or at least up to like the most recent patched original, truly original version, except it runs 4x3 on Windows 10, and it's just the original. That's barely the minimum just to get it running, and then you have the optimized version, which does accurate pixel scaling, has options for anti-aliasing and MSAA, although it looks like that's not recommended because it takes away the unique, it's supposed to be a little pixelated, it's supposed to have that look, so you don't want to smear it and blur it. So you've got 2 ways to play it. It's not truly a remaster, it's just basically a fix to get it so that you can run it, because Diablo 1 in particular was hard to run on older systems. And to your question, Sebastian, about why Blizzard didn't do this themselves, Ars Technica, I think it was, got an early look at this. They said that Blizzard and GOG briefed them about a week ago, and based on what they asked these companies, when you have Battle.net today, it has to use the new Battle.net infrastructure, and this game does not, and they didn't want to do the work to make that work.
God knows.
So they can't host it, or at least they don't want to modify their rules to host it through their current Battle.net. So they looked at GOG, which has this great history of doing this kind of work to get older games working. And again, we don't know exactly the reasons, but it seemed like a good fit. So they had them do the work for them. And GOG always, I mean, they've done great work on a number of titles to make them run well.
Yeah. I mean, I could say they did that for Duke Nukem 1, 2, and 3D, but of course those are no longer on GOG.com.
I remember
This
the
is
day
good news for GOG, though.
old Game Spy died. Because that was how they did it.
Wasn't
Back in
GameSpy
the day,
just
it was GameSpy.
patches or no? That was a distribution platform too.
No, multiplayer.
GameSpy was where you can
they-
join multiplayer
Yeah.
games in a single
Yeah.
Okay.
interface.
But apparently,
Yep.
if you do want to do multiplayer using old school straight IP to IP, no firewall, no protections, this will do it. This will work. If you run this version that you get from GOG, it's not necessarily recommended, but you can do it if you want to.
Well, wasn't the original Diablo required NetBIOS or NetBEUI or IPX, SPX?
I don't know.
Yes, you could do it IPS, SPS, but it was much harder than NetBEUI.
Yeah.
But yes, I
Terrible.
remember setting that up.
Yeah, it didn't support TCP/IP.
Oh God, no.
Yeah.
You were actually better off getting a crossover cable and playing with somebody in the same place.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it does require a 14,400 BPS modem or null modem cable.
Yeah, well, null modem, crossover, whatever you want to call it. Yeah.
Yes.
Cool.
Anyway, that's another week, everybody. Thanks for watching and or listening.
And thanks for
We'll see
putting
you
up
next
with
week.
our occasional date confusion.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I was on a plane last night. I couldn't. The bandwidth on United flights is not sufficient to host a remote podcast.
Yeah,
It's
the
not
damn
really
snakes
sufficient
are
for
taking it all
anything.
up.
Although I must say, my final leg last night from San Francisco to CVG was it was a red eye, the most physically attractive flight crew I've ever seen in my life.
All male?
And I'm not
or
trying to be
female?
sexist or anything. It was a mixed gendered crew, but like every person on the different age ranges, races, genders, it was like everyone was like Hollywood model looking. And I got worried. I was like, this plane's going down. This isn't right. You know, most average Americans don't look like this. There's something wrong. This is like Lost weirdness.
I'm
know.
on a made-for-TV movie here.
Yeah.
Maybe it was how much had you had to drink at this point is my question. How attractive were these people?
I mean, I had a couple glasses of wine during my layover, and I was in first. I got upgraded to first for the flight, so I had a few drinks to start the flight. But I noticed them
Oh,
before I
no
had
wonder
those
they were
drinks.
attractive.
Yeah. It's like there's a Family Guy early on where Brian is in the airport bar and he's hitting on this woman next to him. He's like laughing and he's like, he calls her "you increasingly attractive looking woman." And I feel like that's exactly what may have happened there.
No, these were just. I mean,
Oh, there are so many jokes you shouldn't tell anymore.
yeah. I mean,
Well, this is new.
the pilot looked like Ryan Reynolds at age 60. Ryan Reynolds.
I don't know what
is an
that means. What does that
he's
mean?
a-
Is that
Not
like,
he's an
necessarily a
attractive
good
man.
thing.
Just say it looked like
you
Rock
mean like
Hudson.
Ryan Reynolds
Yeah.
after the stuff happened to his face in the movie Deadpool, or do you mean like Ryan Reynolds?
No, I mean like
today, but
Ryan
with,
Reynolds, the
gray
human
hair?
being, the very objectively attractive human being but just older and still an attractive man.
Ryan Reynolds, God's perfect idiot. Ryan Reynolds.
Potentially.
That's what he calls
Oh.
himself. Okay.
I've been drinking water
Josh
all
can't
night.
take
I'm way
anymore.
too sober for the end.
Is
of
that
this.
really just water?
Yeah,
Yeah, just
that's
just
horrible,
water.
Josh.
All I have is water too. Nestle Pure Life,
I know.
not a sponsor yet. Not until they see this.
Yeah. Cool.
We gotta get
All right, I'm
that
gonna get outta
Dasani
here.
money. Okay.
Get some.
All right,
get
Josh.
some
Goodbye.